It's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
Thank you very much for being here, and the phone number remains as always, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Great news, Gary and Eric, they return Sunday night, Monday morning. It's always a pleasure for me to fill in. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 WTN. Follow me on Twitter if you would, and there's a lot of great stuff that I've posted this morning. And I got to tell you, I'm watching the footage of Donald Trump and his stand-up performance, if you will, at the Al Smith dinner. And it is really funny. Now, a couple of things. I'm going to play you a couple of audio bites, and I'm going to play them throughout the night. I've got a lot of news for you this morning and hoping that you'll participate at 866-90-RED-EYE. But the former president, perhaps future president, he was in really, really good form. One of the things that I've noticed, if you look at the headlines, if you Google Donald Trump, Al Smith dinner, you're going to see a lot of headlines. And those headlines, really what they do is they accuse Donald Trump of being really nasty. They accuse Donald Trump of being really mean and really cutting towards Kamala Harris. Now, I will tell you that that is all by design from the mainstream media, the fake news. In reality, Donald Trump was doing what is expected of him at the Al Smith dinner. You see, if you don't know what the Al Smith dinner is, and I know that Gary and Eric have talked about this, the Al Smith dinner has been going on for, years and years and years and years. And basically what happens is presidential candidates, when it comes around, and, every 4 years, everybody gets together, including the presidential candidates, and they roast each other. And it's all in good fun. The Al Smith dinner, it is for Catholic organizations. And here's the thing. It's supposed to be funny, and it's supposed to be lighthearted. Now, yes, Donald Trump, as Donald Trump does, he gets really cutting. But that's the whole point. And Kamala Harris, she chose not to show up. Now, why would Kamala Harris, and by the way, she is the first presidential candidate not to show up to the Al Smith dinner since Walter Mondale in 1984. Now, Kamala Harris, she was out campaigning in Wisconsin. And for the former president, Donald Trump, he had a few things to say about that.
But my opponent feels like she does not have to be here, which is deeply disrespectful to the event, and in particular to our great Catholic community. Very disrespectful.
And it was clear that the folks in the room, they didn't appreciate Kamala Harris not showing up.
But if you really wanted Vice President Harris to accept your invitation, I guess you should have told her the funds were going to bail out the looters and rioters in Minneapolis, and she would have been here, guaranteed she would have been here.
You see how cutting that is. That is President Donald Trump. And here's the thing. There's a number of things that are going on right now within the Democrat Party. And I'm feeling sort of like what's happening is they're going through different stages of grief. They've had, of course, joy, right? You had joy. They started out with joy. You had the coronation. You had the joy. But now they're realizing that there is a very good possibility that Kamala Harris may lose this race. I know that you've probably seen this, the conversation, the very hushed and tense conversation that Joe Biden and Barack Obama had at the Ethel Kennedy service. Now, this took the internet by storm for a number of different reasons. But here's the thing, is that you had the joy, and you had the coronation, you had the joy, and you had the happiness. But now it almost seems like reality is setting in for the Democrats. And as that reality sets in, every day there seems to be another poll that is worrisome for the Democrats. I think I saw one headline that shows that she is literally behind in every single battleground state. Now, I think almost every single lead that Donald Trump has, it is within the margin of error. But there is no doubt that Donald Trump is headed up and Kamala Harris continues to go down. And so the cameras caught a very serious and hushed conversation between Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And so the question is, what were they saying? Because the body language and their faces, it really made it seem like this is a very serious conversation. And I think now they are at the stage where the anger has begun to set in. You know, they went through the coronation, they went through the joy, they went through the happiness, but now they're realizing that Kamala Harris may not win, and now they're at the anger stage, and they're starting to point fingers at each other. And so people are now lip reading what President Biden was saying to former President Barack Obama. And Obama's not happy with Kamala Harris. Nobody is happy with Kamala Harris. This is the story from the New York Post. President Biden griped to former President Barack Obama that she is not as strong as me. That's what President Biden supposedly said to former President Barack Obama. The lip readers are looking at what Biden said. And Barack Obama agreed that's true. And they say a stunning off-mic conversation deciphered for the New York Post by a professional lip reader. The apparent candid assessment of Vice President Kamala Harris's standing going into the November 5th election occurred Wednesday afternoon as America's two most recent Democratic presidents conversed at Ethel Kennedy's memorial service in Washington. Biden again saying she's not as strong as me, the 81-year-old Biden said, according to the translation, which was produced by analyzing the on-video lip movements during the discussion. And Barack Obama agreed. Now, I'm going to tell you, I don't know if I agree, because let's face it, Joe Biden couldn't put two words together. But the bottom line is that these two candidates, whether we're talking about Joe Biden or Kamala Harris, they have a lot of issues. Kamala Harris simply cannot go anywhere without a teleprompter. She's extraordinarily unlikable. I don't know if I've ever seen, outside of Hillary Clinton, another presidential candidate that was so unlikable. One of the big problems that she had during that interview with Bret Baier, unlikable. That, and she couldn't find the truth if it slapped her in the face. And so for Kamala Harris, she is now, we are, less than 3 weeks from November 5th, and she is dealing with polls that are going down. Donald Trump, her opponent, his polls are going up. And now there's this video that is out that shows that Barack Obama and Joe Biden both agree that Joe Biden is the stronger candidate. Again, I don't know if I buy that, and something tells me that for the former president, Barack Obama, maybe he was just being nice to Joe Biden. Maybe that's part of it. But you've got the bickering. I think the bigger point here is that you've got the bickering within the Democrat Party. Because you've got Joe Biden, who's really ticked at Nancy Pelosi. I'm not entirely sure where Barack Obama is with Nancy Pelosi, but I think that everybody's sort of frustrated with everybody else because they organized a coup. They bounced Joe Biden. They eliminated Joe Biden's political career. They basically installed Kamala Harris in there. Now she's not doing well in the polls, and Joe Biden is over here saying, why was I kicked off the ticket? Because she's not doing well. And so now you've got Nancy Pelosi, who really was sort of, intimating without coming right out and saying it, that she was one of the key figures instrumental in booting Joe Biden off of the ticket in that coup. And so now you've got Barack Obama. He's sort of the guy, I believe, that also helped to orchestrate this. I'm not entirely certain where Chuck Schumer is in all this, but the Democrat Party, it is in a complete and utter tailspin. And I personally think it's great. Because, it's interesting. The Democrats, they like to talk all the time, and I've been right here talking about this during my local show in Nashville, Tennessee, on Super Talk 99.7, WTN. I host the morning show, 6 to 10 Eastern. And the Democrats like to say, oh, the Republican Party, they're in such disarray. Donald Trump is at the head of the party, and he is such a train wreck. He's a Nazi, and all of these other things. Last time I checked, by and large, the Republican Party is firmly behind Donald Trump. Democrat Party is an absolute mess. Jim Gaffigan, he was the host for the Al Smith dinner, and he put it this way.
Of course, Joe Biden was our second Catholic president, right? After JFK. President Biden couldn't be here tonight. The DNC made sure of that.
Oh, yes. And, I kind of love the awkward laughter, because the awkward laughter tells you that, no, that joke is not too soon, at least not in political circles. That is exactly what happened. And Joe Biden might be really angry. Apparently, he has yet to speak to Nancy Pelosi since he was booted. But this is really bad. And I think the interview with Bret Baier is exactly, what would you say, the straw that broke the camel's back? I think that's probably it. The straw that broke the camel's back, the interview with Bret Baier, because that did not go well. And here's the funny thing. I see some of the allies of Kamala Harris out there, and they're saying, oh, you know what? This was a great appearance by Kamala Harris, and she was tough, and she stood up to Bret Baier. This was not a good appearance. I mean, I don't know if there's been any polling done. I don't know if there's any polling done on what the people of America thought of Kamala Harris and Bret Baier on that interview. I think that if you were a independent, I don't think that she looked good at all. And I think that if you know your politics and if you know your issues, then you know that she completely skirted away from answering those questions. And so now the question is, what happens next? What happens in the next 2 weeks? There is some data that has been coming out that does show that it looks good for Donald Trump in some of the early voting states where the early voting has begun. Now, I'm not buying into, I'm just going to be honest with you, I don't really buy into much of any of this. I don't. Do I think that Donald Trump is going to do well? Yeah, I do. Do I think that Donald Trump is doing well right now? Yeah, I do. Do I think that ultimately this is going to come down to the wire? We'll have to wait and see. There's some people out there, friends, that are talking about how this is going to be an obliteration, that Donald Trump could get well over 300 electoral votes. Meantime, you got Kamala Harris out there. She's been demanding for another debate.
I know Kamala's word because she spends a lot of time complaining. I won't agree to another debate. But the truth is I've debated twice this year, once against Joe Biden and once against David Muir of ABC.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, there's no reason why Donald Trump needs to do another debate. I mean, I think that for the former president and the vice president, we know everything that we need to know about these two. We know that Donald Trump has a track record. We know that Kamala Harris also has a track record, and it's not a good track record. And the American people know that, and the American people understand that. There is a story that is out there this morning that I'm going to do in the next segment that is going to horrify you. And it's a story of a possible caravan that may be coming through Mexico 450,000 strong. Now, this hasn't hit the mainstream media yet, but I'm going to present it to you here coming up. But bottom line is that the issues are against Kamala Harris. The bottom line is that she is underwater on literally every single issue. And now the Democrat Party, they're in free fall. There's no other way to say it. They are in free fall. They were in panic mode. Now they're in anger mode. They're going to be in sad mode pretty soon, and they're all pointing fingers at each other. And now the question is, what's going to happen on November 5th? We'll all have to wait and see what happens. But, you know, Donald Trump earlier this evening, he had some thoughts on, you know, what could happen if the Democrats lose.
Chuck Schumer is here looking very glum. Doesn't he look glum? He looks glum. But look on the bright side, Chuck, considering how woke your party has become. If Kamala loses, you still have a chance to become the first woman president.
There you go. That's Donald Trump at the Al Smith dinner. This is Red Eye Radio. The phone lines are open. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis for Gary Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
This report is brought to you by Shell Rotella. With advanced synthetic technology, is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance. As the seasons change, so does truck maintenance. Cold weather can affect everything from your batteries and air brake system to tire inflation and fuel lines. Here's a maintenance tip to help make sure your rig is ready when winter comes knocking. When water and moisture build in your air brake system in the dead of winter, it will almost certainly freeze and turn to ice, which can damage valves, air dryers, and other air system components. Be sure to inspect your system for any air leaks and to confirm the system is receiving a clear air supply. Check and drain your air tanks daily to keep water, contaminants, and corrosion at bay. Find a professional service center near you to learn more about winterizing your truck or to have your air brake system inspected today.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis for Gary and Eric. They return Sunday night, Monday morning. I've gone ahead and posted to my X feed the New York Post article that I'm referencing. It's got the video inserted in it of Barack Obama and Joe Biden having a very, what looks to me anyway, like a very distressing kind of conversation. And this was all over the news here in the last 24 hours or so. They have lip readers. This was at Ethel Kennedy's memorial. And Joe Biden is, basically saying that he feels like he is the stronger candidate, and Joe Biden agrees. And the lip readers are looking at this, and they're saying it doesn't seem like there's any anger or tension between Barack Obama and Joe Biden. Basically, they're just talking, and it does seem like they're just sort of in the despair category. You know, that I was talking about the various stages of where the Democrats are right now, the various stages of losing a presidential election, and I believe that right now they may be in the despair category because they know what's going on. There's nothing they can do about it. They've already done it. The Democrats have already done what they did. There is no going back. I'm sure that somehow Joe Biden would love to be reinstalled, but that's not going to happen. And so now they're saying, as they look at this video, there doesn't seem to be any tension between Joe Biden and Barack Obama, but it also looks like they're pretty sad. They're pretty concerned. I think that the Democrat Party in and of itself is pretty angry. And so now what's going on is you have the New York Post and others that are running to Democrats, various Democrats, and they're asking what their opinion is of this conversation between Joe Biden and Barack Obama. What is their opinion of that discussion? I've got that coming up.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. You can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. I love what Jeffrey says on X. I'm talking a little bit about the various stages of grief that the Democrats are in right now. You know, I think they had the stage of joy, obviously, coming out of the DNC after the coronation. They have now some concerns. I think now they're switching to anger because there's a lot of finger pointing going on right now within the Democrat Party as they're seeing Kamala Harris's polling continue to drop and Donald Trump has all of the momentum. They're going to get into anger and then acceptance. They're going to have to. And no, I'm not counting my chickens before they're hatched. But I love what Jeffrey says. He sends me a note on X, posting, instead of the stages of grief for the Democrats, it seems more like they may be going through buyer's remorse. Now, what's interesting, people thought that Donald Trump was crazy. Do you remember when Joe Biden was taken off the ticket and Kamala Harris was put in, she was installed, that whole thing. And Donald Trump said, good, I think she's the more beatable candidate. And oh, the hue and the cry of the mainstream media. You remember when Donald Trump said that, and you remember the reaction of all of these people in Hollywood and all of these people in Washington, D.C., and all of the members of the media. And they were laughing hysterically. Donald Trump may have been right again. And for me, as I'm watching all of this, I think, you know, Donald Trump, I mean, that guy, I've always said he is crazy like a fox. He really is. Because at the time, when you looked at and when you think about just Washington, D.C., and the Democrats and the mainstream media and Hollywood, and when you look at how poorly Kamala Harris is doing and how poorly she did in that interview with Bret Baier this week, and you look at her polling dropping and Donald Trump's going up, there were a lot of people who just thought that between all of those entities, Washington, D.C., the mainstream media, the Democrats, the CNN, MSNBC, I could go on and on. The sheer force of all of those entities, they thought that they could force Kamala Harris over the finish line and convince the American people that Kamala Harris was something that she is not. And they realized, all of those various entities, at some point they realized, you know, we need to show the American people more. And they were forced into it. And so slowly but surely, she goes on podcasts and then she ends up going on 60 Minutes. That turned into a train wreck because 60 Minutes got caught trying to help Kamala Harris. Then, of course, she goes on Fox News to try to build some credibility, some street cred, if you will. And it ended up a complete and utter disaster. And so Donald Trump may have been right when he said that Kamala Harris was the more beatable candidate. Everybody thought he was crazy because at the time, we'd just come off of that horrendous debate performance by Joe Biden. And Joe Biden is a candidate that could, and a president who could barely put two words together. But it turns out that Kamala Harris is more flawed of a candidate than Joe Biden. At least that's the way that it seems right now. And for me, as I'm watching all of this go down, Joe Biden and Barack Obama, they both seem to be in agreement that Joe Biden is the better and stronger candidate. At least that's what Barack Obama said. So I think that old Jeffrey out there on X, he may be right. I think that is a great way to put it. The Democrats may right now be going through buyer's remorse, but to be perfectly honest, there's not a lot they can do at this point. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, and Kay is in Washington, D.C. Kay, thanks for calling in.
Sure. So I wanted to say thank you so much for your platform, and I wanted to just be very brief in my background. I am an American. I'm not an immigrant. I'm a Black American, and I am socially conservative with no allyship to any one party. With that said, I think that Kamala Harris started off wrongly because she thought that she had the vote of all Black Americans with disillusioned ideologies that we've embraced Al Sharpton and people like Roland Martin as our voice. I think that she thought that if she were able to position them to conceal illegal immigrants in our communities, that we would be overcompensating and in agreement to that. Her strategy and her flaw that's going to deny her the presidency is the fact that she's talking to a certain type of Black American who votes. She's not talking to the Black Americans who have now awoken and are questioning the economy, the deleterious effects of just robust illegal immigration, forced integrations, and joblessness. I think that the reason why Donald Trump is capturing different sects of Black Americans and Black men and these narratives have been overemphasized is because, to your point, her fear of an impending loss. And so, for what it's worth,
Kay, you've got some great points. Go ahead and finish. Then I want to play you an audio bite. I want to get your opinion on it, but go ahead and finish up.
Sure. And so when I listen to Reverend Al Sharpton and these other they're profiteers. All of them have nonprofit organizations. 100% of their revenue is race-based, 100%, whether it's in sponsorship or hosting events like the Congressional Black Caucus, galas. It all comes down to a funnel of organizations who are paying money for revisionist concepts of civil rights and DEI, which is a flawed concept. So that's what I wanted to insert in this conversation. Whereas Donald Trump has a constituency. He didn't make promises to Black Americans and minorities. The Democrats did. And now they have to piggyback on that because everything that they promised to do has failed or is non-existent.
I want to get your opinion and great comments, Kay, and I appreciate it. Don Lemon, you may know this story already, but he went off and he was driving to the DNC, and he's redone these comments. He's making these comments again about the discussion of his drive to the DNC. And he stopped in battleground states along the way, and he started asking Black folks who they were going to vote for.
There's a problem. I went from battleground state to battleground state. When they invited me to the convention, I didn't just want to fly there. I said, I'm going to go and talk to voters in battleground states, and I did. I went up to people just doing man on the street. I said, who are you going to vote for? Black men. And time after time after time, they said, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Why?
And that's Dana Bash asking why. And, they say it's, as he's talking to all these folks, it is about the cost of things, gas and groceries and all of these other things. But what's interesting is, Don Lemon, he doesn't seem really concerned with the plight of everyday Americans and Black folks. This is part of what he said. Most
of the time they said, well, for economic reasons. Right? Or because he gave me a stimulus check. And I had to correct them over and over and tell them where that stimulus check came from a Democratic Congress and from Nancy Pelosi. And that Donald Trump actually held the check up so that his name could be put on the check. So they think they got the check directly from him. Meanwhile, Joe Biden has given 1 or 2 stimulus checks as well, but they seem not to know and understand that. You can vote for whoever you want to vote for. But the reasons that you're going to vote for them, I think that they should be accurate and factual, and you should know why you're supporting someone.
I think when I listen to that, he sounds very condescending. And it was Donald Trump who actually, as president of the United States, approved the monies and the stimulus checks and all of that. So it just seems like Don Lemon, he's not really accepting the reasons why Black men and Americans are supporting Donald Trump. He's claiming that folks simply don't know why they support Donald Trump.
You should know why you're supporting someone.
I mean, Kay, what do you think about that?
First of all, I think that that's a great point to bring up. Thank you. Voter suppression in any capacity is illegal. And I think that when Democrats, liberals make these statements in a dismissive format and condescending format, what they're doing is they're bullying. They are forcing individuals to integrate into policies that they don't believe in. And as a result, if they do have a denial of their preferred ideologies, then they begin to suppress their jobs. They begin to use pejoratives to describe them. They, in ignorant speech, name calling, badgering. And for them, it seems to be endorsed by MSNBC and CNN when Don Lemon has projected his priority as a proud member of the LGBT community, and most Black Americans, unbeknownst to him, especially Black men, are socially conservative, and their views are polar opposites. So it's unreasonable for a person that has amassed a certain amount of wealth to try to persuade us that he is in a Prius driving across the United States, stopping randomly in Black communities and being accepted, and then talking to them as if he's Barack Obama. He was fired. He's technically an underdog and a loser. And when you look at his statistical analysis, his platform as a YouTube influencer, because that's what he is now, his numbers are significantly low. No one's listening to Don Lemon. He needs a soundbite. He needs a talking point to grab the attention of an audience that has now moved on to other liberal commentators that tell them exactly what they want to hear because they're too lazy to read the narrative and to review economical perspectives, GDP, and things like that they just don't understand.
Okay, great comments. I appreciate your call, and you are spot on, absolutely spot on, and thanks again. Yeah, Don Lemon, I think you folks probably would understand that I'm not a big Don Lemon fan, but when he's talking about the numbers and the trouble that the Democrat Party seems to be in with Black men, he is right on that point. I think that he's dead wrong, and I do believe that he's coming across very condescending when he talks about how, well, these Black men, they're supporting Donald Trump, but they don't know why they're supporting Donald Trump. And the reasons that they're talking about why they support Donald Trump, they're simply wrong. How obnoxious is that? I mean, this whole segment, Dana Bash and Don Lemon, as they're talking about Black men, it is so, I mean, I'm a white guy, but I would be so insulted if I was a Black man and I've got Don Lemon, this elite commentator, and this white woman telling me that I don't know why I'm supporting the guy that I'm supporting for president. Are you kidding me? To quote J.D. Vance, do you hear yourself? And you see, this is the reason why Democrats are seeing all-time lows in support from the Black community and support from specifically Black men. And CNN and some other outlets as well have really been focusing on this because this election could turn on the fact that it does seem like Black men are transitioning over to the Republican Party. I'm going to talk about that and a whole lot more straight ahead. 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. It's Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Another highlight from Donald Trump at the Al Smith dinner.
Better wrap up because Mayor Adams told me earlier that I needed to make this one very quick, especially The city has reserved this room for a large group of illegal aliens coming in from Texas. That's right. They've reserved many rooms, a lot of rooms, too many rooms.
Donald Trump. By the way, yes, folks are finding me on X at Dan Mandis Show. And one guy asked me if I knew that Donald Trump spent some time in a barber shop on Thursday. Yeah, that is a very big story. And that goes back to what we were talking about last night, which is Donald Trump is doing things that Kamala Harris simply could not. Donald Trump walks into a barber shop, and he's just hanging out with a bunch of guys. They're laughing, they're carrying on, they're cutting up, they're having a great time. It is an incredibly relaxed atmosphere, and no, Kamala Harris certainly could not do that.
Top of the Hour News is brought to you by House Products. Visit houseproducts.com.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here indeed. In for Gary and Eric, they do return on Sunday night, Monday morning. It's been a great week, and appreciate you listening right here on Red Eye Radio. The battle for the black vote. Put that in air quotes, because I hate, putting folks in groups. But the headline all over the media today has been, and the last couple of days, honestly, has been this conversation about the battle for the black vote. And this was the headline in Politico. Listen, some black voters in Georgia see Donald Trump as a real option. You know what's interesting? Everywhere I turn, there are articles in mainstream media, and they're talking about how Kamala Harris is losing support or missing opportunities with various voting blocs. I just saw, and I'm going to dive into it here in a little bit, but there's a great article in Newsweek, and they talk about how Pennsylvania is a state that has a huge number of Catholics. Kamala Harris choosing not to go to the Al Smith dinner, and the Catholic media organizations have also been asking Kamala Harris to please do some interviews. She has not responded. How do you have a battleground state? Every single political analyst that I have either spoken to or read or listened to or watched will tell you that this election will be decided in the state of Pennsylvania. And so you've got a state that has a large number of Catholics, and you don't engage? I mean, people are talking about how this is going to be a major, major point of contention if Kamala Harris loses this election. And every day, Donald Trump is looking better and better. The decisions that she is making right now, choosing not to engage with Catholics, choosing not to go on Catholic media organizations, choosing not to go to the Al Smith dinner, it's going to cost her. And now, of course, again, we know that she is losing, and we spoke a little bit about this in the previous hour, about how she is losing. She is losing support from the black community, and this has been an especially big part of the news cycle this week. And so the article in Politico, the headline, again, some black voters in Georgia see Donald Trump as a real option. And it talks about how well Trump is doing, not only in Georgia, but across the country, making inroads with the black community. Just a few quotes. 28-year-old Arthur Buford, again, in Georgia. This is what he says. He says, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of Donald Trump, but I'll definitely take Donald Trump over Kamala Harris, adding that he was impressed by Donald Trump's business experience, while suggesting that Kamala Harris, a former prosecutor, California Attorney General, and senator, was not qualified and just seems to have been given everything in her career. 72-year-old Joseph Parker says he is voting for Donald Trump this year in Georgia. It is the first time he has ever voted for a Republican, telling Politico Trump's a man of his word, and what he says he's going to do, he does, Parker says, and everything is so high right now. Groceries are high, clothing is high, everything. Gasoline is also really expensive. He says 4 years ago, it wasn't that high. And so people do see the difference in Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And they want someone who is going to be honest. They want some of what they had 4 years ago. And this guy, 72-year-old Joseph Parker, he says, I want what I had 4 years ago as well under Donald Trump. You know, they also say that this Joseph Parker was originally reluctant to state who he was going to vote for. Now, again, this is a 72-year-old guy. He has been a lifelong Democrat, and he says he was reluctant because, frankly, there's a lot of pressure in the community right now, in the black community and probably beyond as well. Because if you're a Democrat and you dare support Donald Trump, even after everything we've seen in the last 4 years related to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, there are still people that will bully you if they realize that you are a supporter of Donald Trump. It is amazing. We all know the story of Barack Obama, where he has been out there now. He's on the road, and he is trying to convince black males especially to vote for Kamala Harris. And the question is, why should they? I mean, what has Kamala Harris done, or the Democrat Party? What have they done for our country, for the black community in the last 3.5 years? Because, you know, last time I checked, presidential candidates have to earn the votes of the American people. And you have two candidates running right now. You've got Trump and you've got Harris. And it seems to me like since Barack Obama ran for president many years ago, the support from the black community has been waning ever since for the Democrats. Harry Enton over there at CNN was talking about this, the issues that the Democrats have with the black community and this erosion of support in black men, especially men 18 to 44 years of age.
I never noticed before and make me go, whoa. This is one of them, all right? This is the Democratic margin among black men under the age of 45 in presidential elections. You go back to November of 2012, what do you see? You see Obama by 81.
Yeah, you see on the screen that Barack Obama, when he won in 2012, he had 81% of the vote. But since then, you have Hillary Clinton with 63% of the vote. It then goes down more with Joe Biden at 53%. And now Kamala Harris, with black men 18 to 44, is at 41%. So over the years, you have black voters who have just fled the Democrat Party. Now, one thing is obvious, and that is that Donald Trump came on the scene against Hillary in 2016. So perhaps you could say that since Donald Trump came on the scene and he battled Hillary for the White House, Donald Trump has been taking more and more black support away from the Democrat Party, from Hillary Clinton, from Joe Biden, and now from Kamala Harris. More and more black voters, especially males, are gravitating towards Donald Trump and towards the Republican Party. Then they go into black men overall, and it doesn't look any better. Obama had 85% overall of black men. Then Hillary had 71%. Then Joe Biden had 69%. And now Kamala Harris, she has dropped big time to 54%. So younger black men, overall black men as well, things are not looking good for the Democrat Party, and things are not looking good for Kamala Harris. And that is emblematic of what is going on right now, where earlier today or yesterday, Thursday, Donald Trump went into a barber shop and he's hanging out with all the guys there, and I think it was Detroit. He walks into this barber shop. They've got dozens and dozens of black men in there, and they're just shooting the you-know-what. They're just hanging out and talking. There's no way the vice president could have done that. She's too awkward. Enton then looks at black women among the last 4 presidential candidates. Now, both Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton had black women by 93%. Then Joe Biden slips a little bit down to 85%. You know where Kamala Harris is? And realize this is her demographic. She is a black woman. She is at 71%. In other words, a black woman is doing the worst in polling among black women in the Democrat Party of the last 4 presidential candidates.
But the bottom line is, when you're talking about the base of the Democratic Party, you would think that Kamala Harris would do very well among black women based upon history, and of course she would be the first black woman president, but she's actually doing the worst for a Democratic candidate among black women since 1960.
I mean, that is crazy. And so, yeah, I think the Democrats, they have buyer's remorse. They have buyer's regret. I mean, let's face it, she was installed. And you know what part of the conversation with this has to be? Is that, yes, she was installed. She was she was the first to drop out of the Democrat primary way back when. This woman is not tested. And that was so completely obvious in that interview with Bret Baier. So obvious. She comes off as unlikable. She comes off as defensive. She has no interest in actually answering the questions. She's not tested. And right now, she's not representing very well. That's why when you have Joe Biden and Barack Obama, and they're at that funeral, Ethel Kennedy, they're at that funeral, and the cameras capture them talking, and the lip readers look at that, and they figure out that Joe Biden is saying to Barack Obama, I'm the stronger candidate. I'm the stronger candidate. And Barack Obama agrees with Joe Biden. That tells you that the Democrat Party right now, they're pointing a lot of fingers at each other because somebody made the decision. Somebody made the call. It was either Barack Obama or Nancy Pelosi or everyone. But someone made the decision to force Joe Biden out and install Kamala Harris. And now they're dealing with the consequences. And it was Donald Trump way back when, and so many people laughed at Donald Trump when he said Kamala Harris is the weaker candidate. It turns out that Donald Trump was right. New York Times, earlier this week, they look at these issues. They say that a lot of what Donald Trump says, this is the New York Times now, a lot of what Donald Trump says are racist. They're racist dog whistles, but the black and Hispanic community, they say, don't care about those dog whistles, those supposed dog whistles. What horrifies the elite, what horrifies the progressive Democrats in this country, people like Don Lemon, is that, you know what? The things that Donald Trump says that people say are racist and horrifying, a lot of folks, a lot of black folks, a lot of Hispanic folks, a lot of white folks think that these are good ideas. Around 40%, and this is the numbers from the New York Times, around 40% of black voters and 43% of Hispanic voters say that they support building a wall along the southern border. Similarly, 45% of Hispanic voters and 41% of black voters say they support deporting undocumented immigrants. Now, that may horrify the elite progressive Democrats in this country, but the elite progressive Democrats, they don't have to live with the ramifications of illegal immigration and rampant illegal immigration and the crime that follows. Half of Hispanic voters and nearly half, 47% of black voters, say that crime in big cities is a major problem that has gotten worse, not better, like the Democrats have been saying. That's essentially the same as the share of white voters who say the same darn thing. Ultimately, we'll see what happens on Election Day. But one thing I've noticed is that Donald Trump spending some time today in a place called JaVale's Barbershop in the Bronx. Talking about that earlier, the barbershop in the Bronx. He's hanging out with folks. He's talking to them, and they're having a great time with all the laughter. And they're simply put, having a lot of fun. And I think that's great. And it can't be said enough that Kamala Harris, she didn't go to the Al Smith dinner. She's not connecting. She's not even trying to connect with Catholics. That could cost her dearly again in Pennsylvania and in other states across the country. And it really doesn't seem like she is trying to connect with the black community. I mean, how long has this campaign been going on? And she just comes out with those policy initiatives to help the black men in this country. Then she has to, tail between her legs, come back and say, yeah, that whole thing, the things that I wanted to do specifically for the black males in this country. Well, never mind. I've got to open that up to everyone. And that is something that came out, I think it was yesterday, courtesy of the Wall Street Journal. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by FPPF, Fuel Power Max.
Leased owner-operators should be aware of 4 common revenue myths, lest you fall into the trap of mistaking revenue for profit. Myth 1, concentrate on increasing revenue because costs will take care of themselves. This is not true, as costs are fundamental to the profit equation and the area where owners exert the most control to improve. Myth 2, more revenue per mile is the answer to all problems. Though carrier pay packages differ in structure, revenue per mile really doesn't change much from company to company. But there can be a big difference in miles, overall gross revenue, reimbursements, and fees. Myth 3, all you have to do to be successful is run a lot of miles. In reality, revenue is only half of the profit equation. Costs are the other half. It's possible to generate a lot of revenue, yet spend $1.10 to make every dollar. Myth 4, you can tell how well you're doing by the size of your settlement check. The settlement check is only a part of the success picture. Miles driven, loads hauled, conditions, mechanical problems, time off, and especially costs all have to be considered. Owner-Operator Business 101 is provided by Overdrive's Partners in Business program. Go to overdriveonline.com to the Partners in Business section of the website for more details on this and many other topics. Brought to you by Shell Rotella, with advanced synthetic technology is designed to help keep your rig running with more mileage and less maintenance.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Eight 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Speaking of Pennsylvania, Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. Speaking of Pennsylvania, there is something horrifying that is going on in Pennsylvania. This may be going on across the country, too. I really don't know. Threats against Donald Trump supporters. This is the headline, breaking news. Donald Trump supporters in Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump himself was shot, are facing threats of violence. So you know how people put, Trump Vance signs in their front yard? Apparently, those people are receiving letters in the mail, and they're threatening. The story goes like this. The voters are located in Philadelphia, and yes, they're receiving frightening letters. You put a Donald Trump for president sign in your front yard, you're going to get one of these letters, it would appear. Very ominously. The letter starts relatively normally, but towards the end, it gets threatening. By supporting him, by supporting Donald Trump, you are declaring your public support for a disregard of the law, civil discourse, and unity. You are indicating your hatred for minorities, immigrants, foreigners, women, education, the rights of your fellow citizens, the rights of women to make decisions over their own health care needs. This is a reminder that your visible support comes with a price and a cost. There will be consequences. These letters read. Your vote for this guy is seen as treading on my rights. You tread on me at your peril, MFer. We look forward to visiting in the future. That's what's going on. That's what you call real-world voter intimidation. Threats against Donald Trump supporters. And you wonder why there's still, to this day, a lot of closet Donald Trump support. It is because of the hatred and the vile nature of the other side.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
866-90 Red Eye. I was speaking in the previous segment about what's going on in Pennsylvania, where Donald Trump supporters are getting threatened by, obviously, the other side. I got a social media message a while ago. My Nashville audience knows this. I spoke about this. But a guy sent me a note, and he was asking for my advice, and he's got a friend. And his friend, for whatever reason, suddenly became anti-Donald Trump. You know, these two guys, they'd always seen eye to eye, and then suddenly he just decided that he was no longer a Donald Trump supporter, and he was supporting Kamala Harris. And these things do happen. Now, typically, this is not a big deal. I mean, people, everybody's got their journey. But the unfortunate thing that is happening with this listener of mine in Nashville is that the newly minted Donald Trump hater and Kamala Harris supporter, he wouldn't let it go. You see, these two have been friends for like decades, and they'd always seen eye to eye. They'd always been on the same page politically. Suddenly he decides that he's a Kamala Harris supporter, and now the, again, newly minted Kamala Harris supporter, he will not stop badgering my listener. Every day he wakes up, there's more text messages, there's more emails, there's more links, there's more information, there's more Kamala Harris propaganda that this guy, this friend of my listener, keeps sending to my listener. He won't leave him alone. It's like he's just bombarding him with all of this pro-Kamala, anti-Donald Trump propaganda. And so the guy is, trying to engage in his specific ask of me was, how do I battle this guy? How do I stand up for my political beliefs? And how do I fight this guy? He's sending me all of this stuff that I know is BS. But he says, Dan, you live in this world every single day. So how do you fight this? How do I fight all of this propaganda? And, my answer, I think, surprised him. Because a lot of us as Donald Trump supporters, we've lost people that we care about. We've lost people that we've loved. We've been told that we were Nazis and racists and misogynists and all these other kinds of things as people dropped us from their lives. It's, something that has happened for the last many years. And so this guy was asking me how to fight all of this propaganda. And how do you, as a talk show host, do that? And my answer was basically, listen, I can tell you how to do research. I can tell you the sites to go to and all of these other things. But my question to him was, why would you do that? Why would you try to convince this person who is clearly not going to be convinced that you have a right to your political opinion? You have a right to vote for who you want to vote for. Why do you want to convince someone else who is clearly unconvincible? Just like he's not going to convince you that Donald Trump is the devil, you're not going to convince him that Kamala Harris will make an inefficient, horrible president. Once somebody's mind is made up, their mind is made up. And you can only spend so much time trying to convince somebody else before you think, you know what? I've got a life to lead, so you go do you, and I'm going to do me. Because clearly, this guy doesn't have any interest in having a friendship with a person who is a Donald Trump supporter. He's trying to change my listener. And so his basic question then, when he realized that I really wasn't going to tell him how to fight all of this propaganda, because there is no easy way. You've just got to be well-read and you've got to be confident in your opinions. But I guess my question would be, and my question to my listener was, why do you want this in your life? I mean, I realize that a lot of us have been victims of friends and family who have dropped us because we're Donald Trump supporters. And we always say, you know what? We're the better people. We're the better person. We've never dropped, and I've never dropped anyone because they were supporters of Joe Biden or Hillary Clinton or Kamala Harris. I never have, and I never would. Unless they can't handle the fact that I'm a Trump supporter, which I am. So I told this guy, you need to decide whether or not you want to be friends with somebody who will not accept your political opinions and where you stand politically. You see, there's a difference between dropping somebody because of their political opinions. This guy would not be dropping his Kamala Harris-loving friend because of his political opinion. He would be dropping him because his friend, can't accept him as he is. And if you can't have a friendship where you can't have a nice, lively debate, but not letting it take over like a cancer, the relationship, well, then you might as well just put that person out of your life, because it's not worth it. It's not worth it to have those people in your life that are a constant poison, that are constantly telling you that you are wrong. There was a point in my life as a talk show host, and I've been hosting talk shows for years and years and years. And there was a time when I would really work hard to engage what I used to affectionately call hate listeners. But I'm noticing these days that the hate listeners are becoming more and more hateful. And let me tell you something, friends. If Donald Trump ends up winning this campaign, it's going to get a lot worse. And so I find myself, as time goes on, less and less tolerant of hate listeners. If somebody has a differing political viewpoint than I do, well, that's fine. I don't have a problem with that. But if their opposition to my political beliefs is coupled with hate, then I don't want them in my life. And you know what I've noticed is that once I decided that I was no longer going to engage the crazy, once I decided that I was no longer going to engage the hate, my life's a lot better. Do you know that I used to pride myself on trying to engage with people that hated me? I did. I used it as I thought that it was sort of like a point of pride. But now I realize that I've got a lot of people in my life that may or may not agree with me, but they respect me and they love me. Those are the people that I focus on. And that's what I told my listener. Focus on the people in your life that accept you for who you are. Because what we're finding out, and what we're really going to find out if Donald Trump wins this election, we're going to be reminded once again how really vile some people can be. And that's what they're finding out in Pennsylvania with all of these people, apparently, or these people that are threatening Donald Trump supporters. And if you think that it's going to ease up after this election, if Donald Trump wins, I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's going to get worse. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. So, yes, we do have a new caravan apparently on its way. Word is there is a 400,000-strong caravan that may be making its way to America, says reporter Todd Bensman. Now, this is a guy who he's written a lot of books on the border. This isn't a hack. He is a respected reporter, and he's a respected journalist who has been covering all things illegal immigration and the border for years. Now, you know that Kamala Harris and the media, they like to say that illegal immigration is at its lowest level in years, right? We've all heard that talking point time and time again. Well, according to this reporter, Todd Bensman, they're all holed up in Mexico, waiting to come into our country. He says that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, the Democrats, actually cut a deal with Mexico to round all these people up. They were coming to America. They had tens of thousands of, soldiers or whatever, but they rounded up all these people. They were coming to America. And they said, no, you're not going to cross. We're going to sort of hold you over here until after the election, because they realized that all of this illegal immigration was bad for Kamala Harris. And so this guy, Todd Bensman, he was on with a friend of mine, a guy by the name of Michael Patrick Leahy.
They came down. They wanted to get the numbers of border crossers lower at our border for the election campaign, so it didn't look so bad. And what they did is they just had Mexico put 35,000 troops out and scoop up every immigrant they could get their hands on along our border and internally deport them down here to Tapachula and another city called Villahermosa.
So Tapachula is right on the border with Guatemala. And so this guy is saying that Mexico has basically grabbed all of these people, and they're basically holding them until after the election because they wanted they wanted Kamala Harris and Joe Biden to have the talking point, and the Democrats, that the number of people crossing our southern border is at its lowest in years. They wanted to have them to have that talking point, so they basically nabbed them, and they're holding them in these two Mexican towns. I mean, the border crossings looked really bad, and Biden and Harris knew this was killing their campaign, so this was the solution. And so now we'll see what happens if the election, happens. Obviously, it's going to happen on November 5th. This guy says that on November 6th, that is when all of these people will be released, and they'll start coming towards our border.
There are now 150,000 jammed up in this little city down here behind militarized roadblocks so that they can't get at our border and make Kamala Harris look bad and have to answer questions about why thousands and thousands are pouring over the border. This is how they did it. They did it by hemming them up here in Tapachula, and I decided to come down and take a look at what it's like inside this hellscape.
Hellscape is what he says. Now, again, this guy's a best-selling author. He appears all over the place, and he has written for the Daily Mail. He's written for the New York Post and a lot of other magazines and newspapers and websites as well. And he says that right after the election, a total of 400,000 plus will be coming to America in what I would call a mad rush to bring in as many people as possible. So that if Donald Trump wins, they'll try to bring them all in just so that they can get a final 400,000 plus into our country before Donald Trump takes over and executive orders us back into appropriate border security. But listen, there is a reason why the Border Patrol Union of 16,000 strong has supported Donald Trump, as they did this week.
America, I have a message for you. If we allow Border Czar Harris to win this election, every city, every community in this great country is going to go to hell.
I mean, listen, the Border Patrol, they don't lie. And that is why they did announce.
On behalf of the 16,000 men and women represented by the National Border Patrol Council, we strongly support and endorse Donald J. Trump for President of the United States.
Yeah, that was a big deal. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric right here on Red Eye Radio. One of the things that I find very communal about Donald Trump supporters, and I talked a little bit about this in the previous segment, is because a lot of us have had the same experiences. For example, as I mentioned in the previous segment, we have lost people who decided they couldn't deal with us in their lives because we were Donald Trump supporters. And a lot of us have been threatened. And I think that's why when people on the left say, oh, these Donald Trump supporters, it's a cult. No, it's not a cult. It's just that we've all been through a lot of the same things. And they're not good.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here in for Gary and Eric. They return Sunday night, Monday morning. Please follow me on X if you would, at Dan Mandis Show. You can also follow me on Facebook as well. I post a lot of things to X, as a matter of fact, and one of the things that I posted this morning, was Donald Trump at the Al Smith dinner. Now, this is an important story for two reasons. Number one is because Donald Trump shows up to this Al Smith dinner, and Kamala Harris did not. The reason why that's important is because Donald Trump is doing everything he can to build bridges and find as big of a tent as he possibly can, so that his support can be, all inclusive. You can have as many people, as many different kinds of people, religions, nationalities, whatever, all under his tent. And isn't that what Republicans have been told and have been telling each other for a long time, that we need to have a bigger tent? Yes. It is always so interesting to me that you have so many Republicans that are out there, and they've been saying, oh, the Republican Party needs a bigger tent. We can't just be the party of old white guys. I never say that, by the way, but some people have. And so here comes Donald Trump, and he is working very hard to work on a coalition of Hispanics and black folks and white folks and you name it. He's trying to build that coalition, and the Al Smith dinner was a reach out to the Catholic community. Kamala Harris is nowhere to be found. Somebody please remind me, Which party seems to pride itself on being the party of diversity? Isn't that the Democrats? Well, it's kind of weird because it seems to me we are less than 3 weeks away from the official day of voting. A lot of people early voting, thank you. But, less than 3 weeks away from November 5th, and Kamala Harris is not reaching out to the black community. She's not reaching out to the Catholic community. You may say, well, Dan, she is reaching out to the black community. Barack Obama is out there berating the black community. Isn't that a reach out? No, man, that's not a reach out. That's a berating. That's a nagging. That's a cajoling. And listen, if you have to berate people, if you have to insult people, if you have to really work hard to convince people that you should be voting for your political candidate by calling them sexist and misogynist if you don't vote for their candidate, well, then maybe that candidate isn't worth your vote. And I think that there's a lot of people, there's a lot of black folks out there and a lot of Catholics that are realizing just that Kamala Harris is not the right person for the job. There's a number of things going on out there in the world of news today. Number one, there's still a lot of conversation about this discussion, this very hushed discussion between Joe Biden and Barack Obama. And they're at the funeral of, I think, Ethel Kennedy, right? And so they're having this hushed conversation, and the cameras caught it. And while there was no audio, you could certainly see the lips moving and the body language. And so official lip readers were basically saying that what Joe Biden was saying is that he is the stronger candidate. And Barack Obama said, yes, you are. And so now you've got the Democrat Party, and it feels like they're almost in a civil war right now because there's all kinds of things going on. You've got Joe Biden, who is angry because he was basically taken off of the ticket, replaced by Kamala Harris. Nancy Pelosi and Barack Obama, it seems to me like they're the ones that did that. And now Harris, the vice president, she is train wrecking. And now there's a lot of finger pointing going on within the Democrat Party because she's not engaging the Catholics. She just started engaging the black community. How bad is it? It is so bad that they had to bring in Barack Obama. And again, not to belabor the point, but he thought the right play was to berate black males into voting for and supporting Kamala Harris. And so I think that tells you a number of things. Donald Trump earlier today, on Thursday, he was in a barbershop, and he was in a barbershop with a lot of black people. And they were just hanging out, and they were talking, and they were having a great time. And a lot of people are saying, well, that is something that Donald Trump can do, and Kamala Harris simply can't. And one of the things I think that people see about Kamala Harris is that she's not real. Do you know what I mean? She has to continue to look at the teleprompters to, figure out what she is supposed to say. I mean, Telemundo. She did that town hall on Telemundo, and you saw the teleprompter, which means that the whole thing was not really a town hall. What it was a stage play. Because to put her answers on a teleprompter means that they knew the questions in advance. And that tells you that, yeah, the whole thing was nothing but a stage play. Meantime, you've got Donald Trump. He did show up to the Al Smith dinner, which is a big Catholic thing, and it's something that presidential candidates for years have been going to, and it's kind of like a roast. And Trump went, and Kamala Harris decided not to show. And the question is why? Why did she decide not to show? Well, I think the reason why she decided not to show is because clearly she couldn't keep up with the comedy chops of Donald Trump.
But unfortunately, Governor Walz isn't here himself, but don't worry, he'll say that he was. He's going to say he was. I used to think the Democrats were crazy for saying that men have periods, but then I met Tim Walz.
I mean, look, Donald Trump last night, he absolutely killed it at the Al Smith dinner. And listen, if you think this is not a big deal, I believe that it is for a number of reasons. Number one is because, yes, Donald Trump was really funny. Number two, Harris decided not to show up. But Trump looks real here. Again, not to belabor the point, but the vice president, she doesn't look real. Everything is on a teleprompter. She doesn't really have much of a personality. Then you've got Donald Trump.
And as you may have seen, Kamala did an interview on Fox News yesterday. It went so poorly for her that the Democrats have been forced to install another 100 drop boxes throughout the city. And the upside really is Kamala now sees the benefit of deportation. She wants to deport people. She's vicious. She wants to deport people, and she wants to start by deporting Brett Baer, Fox.
There you go. I mean, I don't know who wrote the jokes for former President Donald Trump, but I think that they were really great jokes, and he had the guts to show up, which is more than we can say about Kamala Harris. And even Donald Trump bombs on occasion.
But apparently Joe didn't think it was fair for me to have the podium to myself with Kamala skipping the event. So he called, looked at me, and said, "Don't." Does anybody understand that? Yeah. I thought it was actually very good until just now.
I believe that if you want to see the entire comedic speech by President Trump, you can see it. Follow me, please, if you would, on X at Dan Mandis Show. He did have, I want to play one more audio bite, and then I'm going to get to some of your calls. This was a rough one. This is where he talked about Kamala Harris and her plans for child care.
A major issue in this race is child care, and Kamala has put forward a concept of a plan. A lot of people don't like it. The only piece of advice I would have for her in the event that she wins would be not to let her husband, Doug, any win. Just keep him away.
Oh.
That's a nasty one. That's nasty. I told these idiots that gave me this stuff, that's too tough.
See, I mean, obviously you can tell that people are laughing, and people are saying that Donald Trump was brutal. But do you know that every day nastier things are said about Trump? And he handled the whole thing with aplomb. He even called Chuck Schumer a good man. You know, he tries to make nice with everybody. He knows why he's there. He's there to crack some jokes. He's there to make people smile. And he's also there to do his best to raise money for Catholic charities. There's a big article, and I'm going to get to some of the details here in a little bit. But it goes beyond the Al Smith dinner. Their point is, and I think it was from The Hill, their point is that by Kamala Harris not showing up to the Al Smith dinner, which, again, every presidential election, you have both candidates, and they go in there and they roast each other, and it raises a ton of money for Catholic charities. She's not reaching out to Catholics. And the problem is that Pennsylvania, where many people say that this election will be decided, has a lot of Catholics. And so she didn't go to the Al Smith dinner. She's not reaching out to Catholics, and it could be at her own peril. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. Dan is in Colorado. Dan, thanks for calling.
Hey, Dan, how you doing today?
I'm good.
I have a opinion that people are going to differ with. I honestly believe the Democrats are throwing this election. Why didn't she show up at the fundraiser? She was told not to. Because they know they let Joe Biden out gracefully. And they're throwing her under the bus because they know they can't win. However, once Donald Trump takes over, they're going to have 4 years to come up with a good candidate to take on J.D. Vance.
Do you know? Do you know? No, Dan. I'm gonna add fuel to your fire. It's my opinion, and people may disagree with me on this, but it's my opinion that Josh Shapiro didn't actually want to be Kamala Harris's running mate. I think that he told the powers that be, Josh Shapiro, the governor of Pennsylvania, I think that he went to the powers that be in the Democrat Party, and he said, Kamala Harris, this campaign, and if she's elected president, she is going to be an absolute train wreck. And I don't want anything to do with anything that has Kamala Harris's name written on it. Because if he ended up being her running mate, and then, Lord help us, if she ran, the 4 years would be just awful. And so he would have that stink of Kamala Harris on him if the campaign was lost, or if she won the campaign. Either way, whoever her running mate is loses in the end. So yeah, I'm with you. People have ridiculed me for this particular opinion, but I've just thrown it out there. I just think that Shapiro wanted nothing to do with Kamala Harris. I think that they understand that she has been a train wreck since she was chosen to be Joe Biden's running mate way back when. She is very much disappointed as a vice president, and as a candidate for president, she has been an epic disaster. So you actually bring up some good points. Dan, I've got about 30 seconds left. Go ahead. What else you got?
And I'm just trying to figure out, after this election is over and she has nowhere to go, what university is going to give her a professorship and offer her $500,000 a year?
Probably the University of Pennsylvania, because they did that for Joe Biden.
I agree. Okay, thanks, Dan. Appreciate it.
All right, man. Have a great day. The phone number is 866-90-RED-EYE, 866-907-3339. We'll return next on Red Eye Radio.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio, 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. My name is Dan Mandis, so you can find out more about me on my social media. I'm on Facebook and also X, at Dan Mandis Show. Appreciate a follow on either. I'll follow you back. I host a morning show in Nashville, Tennessee on Super Talk 99.7 at WTN. Y'all remember when this happened, right?
And we have a new form of crime. It's called migrant crime, and it's happening at levels that nobody thought possible.
President Trump, as you know, the FBI says overall violent crime is actually coming down in this country. But
excuse me, the FBI they were defrauding statements. They didn't include the worst cities.
Well, it turns out Donald Trump was right. You probably heard this over the last couple of days. I was talking about this right after the debate. I was... my head was exploding because I knew that Donald Trump was right. I knew that what was going on is that you had some of the biggest cities in America, they had stopped reporting their crime statistics. As the story goes, the Biden administration, they made it harder for these cities to report crime statistics. And so the system was so cumbersome and so problematic, they just threw up their hands and they gave up. And so the FBI, they had incomplete numbers. They didn't have all the statistics. So it looked like, because they didn't have all the numbers, that crime was going down. Now, the FBI never came out and said, oh, well, we have incomplete statistics. They never did that. And so basically, for people who didn't know any better, the story was that the crime stats show that crime is down. And conservatives all across the fruited plain were trying to tell people, no, the crime stats are not down. The number of crimes are not down. They're skyrocketing. It's just common sense. And then David Muir fact-checked Donald Trump. That was a very big moment during the debate. Well, now in the last couple of days, the FBI has quietly revised the U.S. crime statistics to show, here's a big shocker, friends, an increase in crime. Yeah. Just like all us conservatives were talking about. An investigation by Real Clear Investigations found that the FBI updated its 2022 crime statistics in September, showing that rather than a 2.1% drop in violent crime as originally reported, the United States actually experienced a 4.5% rise in violent crime. The new data set showed thousands more murders, rapes, robberies, and aggravated assaults. The more than 6% point change is unprecedented in recent FBI statistics reporting. William and Mary Professor Carl Moody telling, again, Real Clear Investigations. I mean, oftentimes, and we can go through the numbers. I'm running out of time in this segment, but you go through all of these numbers, and the numbers, number one, they're horrifying. And number two, the fact that people were calling Donald Trump a liar and a racist for talking about this is unbelievable. Guy says, I've checked the data on total violent crime from 2004 to 2022. There were no revisions from 2004 to 2015, and from 2016 to 2020, there were small changes of less than 1%, but the huge changes in 2021 and 2022, they are unprecedented, especially without an explanation. They say it does make it difficult to trust any data coming from the FBI. So two things. Donald Trump was right. He was sounding the alarm. And number two, Democrat-run cities, they're worse off than we thought.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
So I want to dig into some of the numbers here just briefly, because I know that sometimes talking about polling and these kinds of things just, it kind of makes people's eyes glaze over. But I did think this is interesting. Last night, the Al Smith dinner, that is a traditional dinner. As I've been explaining to you, this is a big-time tradition where presidential candidates go and they trade barbs and they roast each other. And it's all for, I think it's like $5,000 a plate. And both presidential candidates are there and they roast each other. Everybody has a good time. And Kamala Harris didn't show up, and Donald Trump did. And so he told a lot of jokes, and it was actually very funny. But there's a far, far bigger point here. And that is that for Kamala Harris not to show up, it is yet another indication that she's not engaging with a really important voting bloc, and that is the Catholics. And part of this is a really good stand-up by Donald Trump, and he told some really good jokes.
If Democrats really wanted to have someone not be with us this evening, they would have just sent Joe Biden.
Because even when Biden is there, he's really not. And then Donald Trump joked about the fact that Biden really wants back in.
If she does any worse in the polls, they're going to bring him back again, I think. Chuck, he's going to do it. He's the one that got him out. That's the guy.
Chuck Schumer.
Much more so than Crazy Nancy, I will tell you. Because I know him. He did it. Joe has almost disappeared from view. The only way he could be seen less is if he had a show on CNN. They had nothing. They've got nothing.
I mean, listen, Donald Trump was in rare form. I said earlier, I've been playing these jokes off and on tonight. And some guy said on Twitter, you can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. Donald Trump, no doubt, penned his own jokes. I don't know. I don't know if it was Donald Trump, whoever it was. They wrote some pretty darn good jokes.
Tradition holds that I'm supposed to tell a few self-deprecating jokes this evening. So here it goes. Nope, I've got nothing. I've got nothing. There's nothing to say. I guess I just don't see the point of taking shots at myself when other people have been shooting at me for a hell of a long time and they shoot hard.
I mean, listen, even if you are a Donald Trump hater, and I know that there's people out there, that was funny. Donald Trump was very funny. And so when you have even people who don't like Donald Trump, like Brian Stelter saying...
Brian Stelter, what did you make of this performance?
Oh, no, don't ask me first. I thought he was funny. I thought he actually got a few great jokes in.
Yep.
I thought the best moment was we talked about the assassination attempts and made light of what he's experienced, because I think he's experiencing real trauma, real PTSD as a result of the shootings, but he's still able to have a light moment in this room, and he took advantage of the fact that Kamala Harris wasn't there.
Which is
I
really
was
the
disappointed
subtext
that he
of this
kept,
whole thing.
Exactly. That she
They're
didn't
usually
attend.
supposed to be in the same room.
Yeah, and so Kamala Harris did not show up, and she is not engaging Catholics. This is from Newsweek. The headline, Kamala Harris is not engaging Catholic voters, and it could cost her. You know that this election is still really, really close. Yes, Trump has the momentum. Yes, Kamala Harris, I mean, I've been saying, and everybody's been saying, she's losing momentum. I think the current way to frame this is that she has lost momentum. I don't think she's got any momentum left. And part of the problem is this lack of engagement. But because this is so close, and because so many people say that this election will be decided in Pennsylvania, and the fact that she didn't show up to the Al Smith dinner, where there is obviously a lot of Catholics there, it is for Catholic charities. That's going to tick off a lot of Catholics that she decided not to show. They say this year Kamala Harris broke with a long-standing presidential campaign tradition of opting not to attend the $5,000 a plate Smith event last night, Thursday night, instead focusing her efforts on key battleground states, although she is expected to address the dinner attendees by video. It was a really bad video. I'm going to tell you, I'm not even going to insult your intelligence by playing it. I'm just going to tell you that it was bad. But they say, and I'm here to tell you, Newsweek, they're no fans of Donald Trump. But they do say, in contrast, Trump will make his third appearance at the gala, further solidifying his strong ties with conservative Catholics, especially through his positions on abortion. But, you know, they talk about what's going on in Pennsylvania. Harris's team explained that instead of attending the dinner, they are focusing on rallies in swing states. However, in one of the most critical swing states, Pennsylvania, the latest Real Clear Politics average shows Donald Trump leading 48 to 47%. Basically, listen to how close this is. 48.3% to 47.9%. Obviously within the margin of error. They say a big issue for Kamala Harris is that exit polls from 2020 indicate that 30% of Pennsylvania voters are Catholic. And political observers believe that her lack of outreach to the group is going to cost her this election. Because again, you don't outreach to Catholics. You don't go to the Al Smith dinner. You've got a lot of Catholics in Pennsylvania. This election is going to be decided in Pennsylvania. You've ticked off the Catholics in Pennsylvania. You lose the race. And for the life of me, I don't understand why she chose not to go to this dinner. Brian Brown, a political science professor at St. John's University in New York, called this a missed opportunity to demonstrate bipartisan camaraderie. Meanwhile, William McGunn, a former chief speechwriter for President George W. Bush, warned in a Wall Street Journal op-ed that failing to engage with Catholic voters could prove costly in a razor-thin election. Well, this is a razor-thin election. They say her failure to appeal to Catholic voters is not limited to Pennsylvania. According to a National Catholic Reporter poll they released on Monday, Donald Trump is also polling well ahead of Kamala Harris among Catholic voters in other swing states as well. Donald Trump holds a significant lead in Wisconsin, where he is ahead by 18 points among Catholics, and in Michigan, where he leads by 12. They talk about abortion could sway Catholic voters this cycle as the church views it as murder. In 2020, Catholics were evenly split between Joe Biden and Donald Trump, who became, of course, as we know, Joe Biden did become the first Catholic president since John F. Kennedy. A recent poll shows 51% of Catholics in swing states are anti-abortion, while 58% believe abortion should be legal. Donald Trump's softened stance, including his promise to veto a national ban, has 45% support among Catholics. And they go on and on. I think you get the idea. Kamala Harris could be destroying her own campaign by not engaging with the Catholics. Here's the other thing, and I did mention this earlier. In addition to Donald Trump showing up at the Al Smith dinner, he is also doing interviews for Eternal Word Television Network, affectionately known as EWTN. That's their television network. And it is the largest Catholic media network in the world. And Donald Trump is doing interviews on EWTN. Do you know who has not even returned their phone calls? Kamala Harris. And it is so stunning to me because they are making every mistake in the book. The Democrats are. And so a guy called up previously in the show, and he brought up a point that I've been bringing up on my local show in Nashville, Tennessee. I've mentioned it here a few times, filling in for Gary and Eric and Red Eye Radio, where I've said it's almost like the Democrats don't even want to win this election. I mean, who thought it was a good idea? Somewhere within the Democrat Party, they thought it was a good idea for Barack Obama to say that black men not supporting Kamala Harris were guilty of sexism and being misogynist. Somebody thought that it was a good idea to have Barack Obama browbeat black men into trying to support Kamala Harris. And, you know, you got black men all across social media, whether it is YouTube, whether it is Instagram, whether it is Twitter, you name it. You got all these black guys that are saying that, no, Barack Obama, you can blank off. You accusing us of misogyny and sexism only makes us more passionate in not supporting Kamala Harris. So the whole thing is just absolutely bizarre. And I don't know why they're doing it. I don't know. It's like the Democrats have suddenly realized that they don't know how to win elections. But I think that they're in a very they're in a very foreign position to them because they have a candidate at the top of the ticket who is not good at all. That's number one. Number two, the more that people see of her, the less they like her. Number three, they have a situation where you have now infighting within the Democrat Party, where Joe Biden and Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Barack Obama have been found talking at Ethel Kennedy's funeral, of all places, where Joe Biden is saying that he's the stronger candidate and Barack Obama agrees. And so you have all these people within the Democrat Party that probably agree with Donald Trump.
But my opponent feels like she does not have to be here, which is deeply disrespectful to the event and in particular to our great Catholic community. Very disrespectful.
And for Donald Trump, clearly that actually was no joke. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
Eight 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number. You can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. A guy posts on X pointing to me. He says, Kamala Harris did not show up to the roast with Donald Trump for the same reason that you, Mandis, would not show up to a rap battle with Eminem. In other words, what he's saying is she is completely outmatched. And I think that she knows that, and the Democrats know that. But Philip may have a different idea. Philip, thanks for calling Red Eye Radio. Go ahead.
No, I think that gentleman hit the nail on the head, actually.
Okay.
That's completely outmatched, and I think it was you said you couldn't wrap your head around why she wouldn't be there, but
okay.
For whatever shenanigans they have, just like, you remember how complacent Hillary was?
Yep.
Not going to those swing states and campaigning, and they thought they had the bag. Well, they undercounted. Then when Biden came around, they waited till the end. They pulled all the ballot harvesting and then got just the right amount of votes needed to beat them.
Yeah, I know.
Instead, as opposed to making a fool out of herself and causing more damage. Philip, you're saying that, and I think it's a great point, that they know the limitations of their candidate, and so they said, yeah, just don't go. Yeah, I could have said it better myself.
All right, Philip, thank you very much for the call out there in Tempe, Texas. You know what? I think there's a lot of face palming going on right now within the Democrat Party. And Philip also made a great point, which is that you worry about the ground game. Because for the Democrats, we all got to be honest. The reason why we really have to, as conservatives, if you're conservative, the reason why we really have to make sure that we get out there and we vote is because it is really close. And the Democrats have a really, really, really good ground game. And so we've got to make sure that the results are so incredibly overwhelming that they're indisputable, if you know what I mean. 866-90-RED-EYE. You can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. I'll follow you back. 866-90-RED-EYE.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One. Now, it's Red Eye Radio. Talk about everything from politics to social issues and news of the day. Whether you're up late or you're just starting your day, welcome to the show. From the Uniden America Studios. For Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, Dan Mandis, this is Red Eye Radio.
866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis here, in for Gary and Eric indeed. Phone lines are open, and the boys will be back in town Sunday night, Monday morning, and we're looking forward to their return. You can find out more about me. I'm on X at Dan Mandis Show. I'm also on Facebook, Instagram as well. All of them at Dan Mandis Show. So the Israelis got a good kill, and this is a very big deal because they were able to take out this guy, Yahya Sinwar. And what's interesting this is one of the higher-ups, if you will, in Hamas, within Hamas. And you know where they got this guy? This is what I love. They got this guy in Rafah, the same Rafah where Kamala Harris told the United States and Israel and told everybody, do not go into Rafah. There's nothing going on in Rafah. Don't worry about going on Rafah. Just don't. Here's what she said.
Let me tell you something. I have studied the maps. There's nowhere for those folks to go.
She studied the maps.
And we're looking at about 1.5 million people in Rafah who are there because they were told to go there, most of them. And so we've been very clear that it would be a mistake to move into Rafah with any type of military operation.
So that was Kamala Harris, and clearly the Israelis ignored her, as they should. But you see, the headlines now are everywhere. Hamas, their chief killed, where Kamala Harris told the Israelis not to go. I mean, you got to love it. And the reason why you love it is because, you know, Joe Biden, more often than not, he is wrong about foreign policy. I mean, most people will tell you that Joe Biden is an absolute disaster on foreign policy. And now it looks like Kamala Harris is following in the current president's shoes. This is the headline from Newsweek. Harris warned Israel not to invade city where it just killed Hamas chief. But, you know, she studied the maps. They say back in March, Vice President Kamala Harris warned Israel not to enter Rafah, the southern Gaza enclave, where Hamas had holed up among the civilian population, saying in an interview that the U.S. would not rule out consequences if the Israeli military moved forward with a gathering invasion. Here's the thing, is that Hamas had gathered there. I mean, everybody knows that Hamas, what they do, and we've talked about this a bazillion times, they have tunnels underneath, they have weaponry, they have hostages as well underneath hospitals and schools and homes, and yes, they also use civilians as human shields. It's what they do. And so I understood the concern of some folks not to go into Rafah because there was a lot of people in this area because that is where they moved. But you know who else was there? Hamas. And so Israel did everything they could to surgically strike and take out as many members of Hamas as they possibly could. But for the Biden administration and for Kamala Harris, remember at the time what she said. She said, don't go into Rafah. I've studied the maps. There's no place for these people to go. That's what Hamas was banking on. And I love the fact that now Israel has been able to kill this guy, Sinwar, this Hamas leader, who apparently this guy was one of the masterminds of the Israeli terror attack. Now, here's the thing. It seems like there's a lot of these guys who were the masterminds behind the Israeli attack because we keep killing, but Israel keeps taking these guys out. And if it was up to Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, these guys would all still be living because these two want Israel to tiptoe around Hamas. They want to tiptoe around Iran. They want Israel to tiptoe around Hezbollah and the Houthi rebels. Israel has got to be tough. And for Kamala Harris to say back whenever it was, in March I guess it was, that Israel should not be going into Rafah, and then the fact that Israel said, you know what, screw it. We're going to go into Rafah, and we're going to take out as many of the bad guys as we possibly can because Hamas is hiding amongst the crowd. Hamas has hostages down there. I think we got a couple of hostages down there too, didn't we? I think we rescued, I think 5 or 6, if I'm not mistaken, a few months ago. We were able to rescue some hostages. And I think that also proved that Kamala Harris and Joe Biden were wrong to tell Israel to not go down into Rafah. I understand that there's a lot of, I'm going to air quote this, innocent people that are getting killed there in Gaza. But the bottom line is there were 1,200 innocent people that were killed in Israel at the hands of Hamas. And so if Israel doesn't do what it has to do, and I fully support Israel doing whatever they have to do to take these folks out, the bad guys, Hamas, the terrorists, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, and it seems like a good number of Democrats in this country, they're siding with the wrong side. They don't understand the difference between good and evil. And I'm sorry, but a lot of those people living in Rafah and a lot of those people living in Gaza, they support Hamas. They celebrate when Hamas attacks Israel. They celebrate when America is attacked. And so I'm sorry, but I don't necessarily feel sorry for them. War is hell. And I do understand that there's a lot of conflict in the region. I totally understand that. But you know what I really want more than anything else? I more than anything else want Israel to live in peace. That's what I want. And if they've got to burrow underground in Rafah to do what they need to do to get the terrorists and kill as many terrorists as they possibly can, then they should do so, and they should do so without the damn second guessing of the current administration, Kamala Harris and Joe Biden. They were wrong when they told Israel not to go into Rafah because they were able to get this terrorist. Now, trust me when I say these guys are like cockroaches, and you kill one, another one pops right up. It's like whack-a-mole. But Israel has to do what they have to do. And the fact that they got this guy, Sinwar, that they killed him in Rafah, where Kamala Harris told them not to go, proves that Israel needs to act, and they need to make their own way in this. And if Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and the rest of the world, quite frankly, in Europe and so forth, if they don't stand with Israel on this, then Israel's going to have to do it by themselves, which is sad, but they need to do what they need to do. 866-90 Red Eye is the phone number, and Joe is in Pennsylvania on Red Eye Radio. Joe, how are you?
Very good, thank you. I have an entirely different perspective on this whole Kamala Harris situation. I don't think she really, deep down inside, wants to be president of the United States. Number one, she picked a loser as a running mate as opposed to Josh Shapiro. Number two, she's at one point or another has alienated so many groups. She's even alienated Arabs, Jews, now the Catholics. I think the only ones she hasn't alienated are the Girl Scouts.
Give it time. It's early.
I just don't think she has the work ethic. She's demonstrated that she isn't putting in the effort that Donald Trump is. She doesn't have the energy level that Donald Trump is. And it's a lot easier for her to stand outside and throw rocks and then go on a speaking circuit and make money doing speaking fees than ever going to work as the leader of the free world. It probably also settled in that if she does win, in 4 years from now, she'd have to do the same thing all over again. And I just don't think she's up for the task, and she's putting in the minimal amount of work to make it look like she does.
You know, it's interesting you say that, Joe, because yesterday, I don't know if you were listening, but there was an article, I think it was in Politico, and there's a lot of Democrats who are frustrated with Kamala Harris because they feel like she's not doing the job. The day that she went on Charlemagne's radio program, she didn't do anything else that day. And people were like, it really takes you an entire day to prepare for a Charlemagne interview as opposed to hitting 2 or 3 battleground states, then jumping to New York so that she can be interviewed by Charlemagne. So you're right. Now, Joe, you're in Pennsylvania. And so Josh Shapiro is your governor. I have, and I mentioned this in the previous hour, my thought is that Shapiro told the powers that be, the power brokers in the Democrat Party, that he actually didn't want to be Kamala Harris's running mate because he realizes that she is a train wreck, either as a candidate or, Lord help us, as a president, and he didn't want to be on her coattails because, quite frankly, that could negatively impact his political career. Do you think there's anything to that?
Could be.
So you're on the ground in Pennsylvania. What are people saying? Because folks are saying that this election could hinge on what happens in your state.
Actually, let me clarify that. I drive for UPS. I work out of New York. I just happen to be driving through Pennsylvania right now. Your screener asked where I was from, and I said, well, right now I'm on the highway someplace in Pennsylvania.
Well, listen, Joe, what I need you to do is pull over into a truck stop and just start asking people. That's what you need to do for the radio program. All right,
Most
Joe.
truckers that I know are Trump fans.
And Joe, I love to hear that, and I appreciate the call very much. Make sure you get out there and vote. Dave is in Rochester, New York on Red Eye Radio. Dave, go ahead.
Yeah, how are you, sir?
I'm good.
Yeah, it's good. I enjoy your show. You're a good sit-in. I just wanted to say it's kind of came to my mind tonight, shifting gears a little bit. I continually hear about this October surprise. It gets you thinking as to what it could be or what it is. But listening to you tonight, speaking about this surge coming from Mexico of about 500,000 illegals, I was kind of thinking, what's preventing them from maybe holding these folks temporarily at the border, getting them registered, and providing ballots for them and getting a vote out of them right off the bat before they even spread them out through the country.
I don't think that 2 weeks is enough time. And personally, although I understand what you're saying, personally, I think that the sheer spectacle of 450,000 Guatemalans and Mexicans coming into our country at one time, right at voting day, would not sit well with the American people. You see, and Dave, you understand this because you pay attention and you listen to Red Eye. They know, and you know, that the illegal immigration issue, it is killing them. It is absolutely killing them, and that is why they've got all of these folks holed up in Mexico, just waiting for the chance to bring them into our country. Probably, as I mentioned earlier, right around the day or so after the election. And Dave, I do appreciate the call. I'll revisit that story since Dave is bringing it up and a lot of new people have come on. I'll revisit that story coming up. But it's a horrifying and terrifying story where the accusation is being made by a reporter who does a lot of coverage on the ground on the border that Biden and Harris, what they did was they struck a deal with Mexico. We need you to round up all these people that are getting ready to come across our southern border, and they're making their way through Mexico. Mexico supposedly, at the urging of the Biden administration, what they've done is they've rounded all these people up, and they're keeping them in a town near Guatemala. They're in southern Mexico. And so what they're doing is they're holding them there, some 400,000 plus, as the story goes, and because they didn't want a lot of illegal aliens coming across our southern border when people were going to the polls, because they knew that it was a disaster issue for the Democrats and for Kamala Harris, our border czar, and also Joe Biden. And so that's what is being reported. Now, whether or not that's true, and I don't know why this guy would not be telling the truth, he's literally on the ground, and this is what people are telling him. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. I mean, it wouldn't surprise me if this is what the Harris and Biden administration really wanted to do. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339. Dan Mandis in for Gary and Eric. This is Red Eye Radio.
Brought to you by Hot Shot Secret.
Hi, I'm Jen Loomis, a transport safety expert at J.J. Keller, and I'm here to share a tip on roadside inspections. Roadside inspections all begin with the driver interview, during which the officer will gather basic information from the driver and prepare the driver for the inspection. The officer will also be evaluating the driver, determining if the driver can speak English, is under the influence of anything, has an illness, or is fatigued. The officer will ask the driver for required documents, including vehicle and driver credentials, the driver's log, and shipment paperwork. The officer may also conduct a vehicle inspection. Before beginning the inspection, the officer will take steps to make sure the inspection can be done safely. These include chalking the wheels, wearing personal protective equipment, and explaining what will be required of the driver. The driver needs to pay close attention to these instructions so that the vehicle inspection can be conducted in a manner that is safe for the inspection official. This tip was brought to you by J.J. Keller and Associates. Visit us at jjkeller.com.
Lines open for your calls. 866-90-RED-EYE on Red Eye Radio.
$866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number. Coming up after the break here in a couple of minutes, at about 36 minutes after the hour, I'm going to tell you the story of the coming caravan. It is horrifying. It is scary. And that story is coming up here after the next break on Red Eye Radio. Dennis is calling from Wisconsin. Dennis, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
Thank you for taking my call, Dan. Hey, listening to that last caller, it struck me that looking at this from a little different tack, it's been said at times that children will reflect the modeling of their parents. When you consider who's been doing the modeling for Harris for the last 3.5 years, or especially the last year, and viewed through that prism, it may make a lot of sense, the actions of his parents.
Yeah.
Or lack thereof, for that matter.
Yep. No, you're right. You're right. By the way, Dennis, you're in Wisconsin, battleground state. So
yes, sir.
Tell me on the ground what's going on.
Well, I'm being perfectly honest with you, even though I'm delivering the newspaper right now, which I do every day, and I listen to you guys religiously. I don't have much contact with people because I'm doing stuff in the middle of the night, and then during the day I kind of hibernate, and I do my coaching in the afternoon, and the junior high kids really aren't plugged into the regular scene, or political scene, I should say. But my general sense is that it's a 50-50 state.
Yeah.
You know, as you approach people, you know, it's going to be a toss-up. I certainly wouldn't trust the polls here. But
no. Although I will say that the polls are showing that I don't remember which poll it is, and Dennis, thanks for the call, but that show that Donald Trump is now winning in not only Wisconsin, but every single battleground state. Now, it is really close, and the polls vary, so I'm not really putting any credibility in the polls at all. I'm watching them because, to be perfectly candid, that's part of my job. And I do understand that polls are a snapshot, and literally we are in October, and anything can happen. Still kind of waiting for that October surprise, whatever that October surprise is. I think that for the American people, they saw in that interview with Brett Baer, Kamala Harris and Brett Baer, that wasn't an October surprise, but that really was just a reality check for the American people so that we can really get an idea as to what Kamala Harris is really like, number one, behind closed doors, and number two, that she is willing to lie and obfuscate, not even come close to the truth when it benefits her politically. Got a lot more straight ahead on Red Eye Radio.
Red Eye Radio from the Uniden America Studios. Now, for Gary McNamara and Eric Harley, here is Dan Mandis.
Coming up, the coming migrant caravan. It is a horrifying story, but first, I want to say hello to Reggie calling from Washington, D.C. Reggie, thanks for calling in. Go ahead.
How you doing? First, I want to say I like the program. Been enjoying it off the late night on my drives home.
Thanks, man.
Yes, I wanted to say a couple things. First off, I find it very, very interesting and telling how the current president and vice president have been treating each other since 2020, since they were running against each other to current day. Because they were, throwing some pretty sharp jabs at each other before, calling each other racist and things like that, and how each other weren't really doing things to stop crime, from when Joe Biden was a senator, from when Kamala Harris was Attorney General / senator and vice president. Joe Biden was vice president for 8 years. You know what I mean? So when Kamala Harris is saying things like in these interviews that, oh, we're trying to get over the last decade. Well, Joe Biden was president for 8 years. Donald Trump was only president for 4 years, and you've been vice president for 3 years. And before that was George Bush. So the last decade has been Democrats, honestly. And it's been interesting, like when they were running against each other, Joe Biden got on the same platform that she just did that everyone was talking about with the Charlemagne and the Breakfast Club thing, right?
Yep.
And he told Charlemagne, if you don't vote for me, you're not black. Kamala Harris did not have a comment about that, kind of got brushed under the rug, and it really didn't offend anybody that it didn't have any context to, right? Because if you're not black, or if you don't have, a black association with friends or family or, someone that you're close to, it really wouldn't strike you as something that was too offensive, right?
Right.
But if I say to you, well, you're not Italian if you don't eat pizza or spaghetti, so arbitrary, it's random, you know what I mean? So the other thing I wanted to say was I don't feel as though 4 years is enough for a president to actually get anything done. So I feel like we have a context in recent history, right? Like the last 100 years. FDR was president for 16 years.
Mm-hmm.
Am I correct?
Yep.
He got so much done in that Great Depression period, and got us through a lot of things. FDR was a Democrat too, if I'm not mistaken.
Well,
that was the 26th.
Right, but we have right now though we've got the Constitution, and constitutionally they're allowed to have 2 4-year terms, a total of 8 years. I see what you're saying,
right?
But part of the reasoning for that is just because we don't want to have too much power consolidated in one person for that length of time.
I can see where you're going with that, but then we also have Supreme Court justices who are elected for life or appointed for life.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't seem to have too much of a problem with that, and I see why. Because I kind of
Reggie, if I may, the reason why Supreme Court justices are appointed for life is because that has to be a non-political position in the sense that they have to make decisions where they don't have to worry about whether or not they're going to be reelected. I mean, their sole focus, the Supreme Court, their sole focus has to be the Constitution and interpreting laws and so forth. And so they can't worry about having to, be reelected and all of these other things.
Explained that to me the other day, and it kind of brought me to that understanding that you're explaining to me now. But I'm not saying that we need to have a president serve 16 years like FDR. Okay. What I'm saying is, because, they might not get elected for their second term, as we're seeing right now with Donald Trump. Everyone thought in 2020 it was going to be 4 more years of Trump, and surprisingly, we got Joe Biden. Not saying that it was unfair or whatever, but from my perspective, being here on the ground in Washington, D.C., right now I can't see Kamala Harris winning. And then before she jumped on the ticket, I didn't see Joe Biden winning. So it's going to be interesting.
Reggie, then I got to ask, who do you see winning?
Right now, currently?
Yeah.
I mean, I would hope it's Donald Trump, because if it's not, it's going to be very, very suspicious. And that's why I even said the whole maybe they need to adjust the 26th Amendment. If I'm not mistaken, that's the one it is. Maybe 6 years could be appropriate, and then they can rerun after 6 years. I mean, a longer term limit, right, for a president. You can throw something in there like a probationary clause where they have a probationary year and they can be reassessed after a certain time. This was a new thing.
Yeah.
Before
Reggie, here's what I would say is that I don't agree with you, but if I did agree with you, here's why I would agree with you, is because for a 4-year term for a president, basically you get a couple of years to get things done. Then you've got to start campaigning. If it's only your first term, then you've got to start campaigning for another.
You have what we have with Donald Trump, and even kind of sort of with Obama, certain things that they were trying to do that were agreed upon by the public, right?
Mm-hmm.
Were kind of stonewalled by their opposition in Congress. So they have 4 years, but how long do they actually have to get things through if they have to spend 2 years battling with their constituents, but with their peers across the aisle?
Yeah.
And if I'm not saying 16 years, but maybe 2 terms of 6, 12 years total. That's not too bad. You know what I mean? Like, it feels like we've been under Joe Biden for 10
Here's what I would say, Reggie, and I got to run. I don't agree with you. I like the 4. However, if I was to agree with you, that would be my argument, is that president has 2 years, the first 2 years to get things done. Then he's got, the final 2 years, he's going to start running for re-election again if it's his first term. But I do appreciate the call. And, we'll have to see what happens. Illegal immigration. Is there a 400,000-strong caravan coming into America? There's a reporter. His name is Todd Bensman, and he is a world-renowned reporter. This guy is not a hack. And so as the story goes, he is reporting that Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, what they've done is they came to an agreement with Mexico. And basically what Mexico did is they rounded up all of the people that were heading to our southern border. And basically Mexico said, no, you're not going to the border just yet. We're going to house you down here.
They came down. They wanted to get the numbers of border crossers lower at our border for the election campaign, so it didn't look so bad. And what they did is they just had Mexico put 35,000 troops out and scoop up every immigrant they could get their hands on along our border and internally deport them down here to Tapachula and another city called Villahermosa.
So Tapachula is right on the border with Guatemala. So this guy is saying that Mexico basically grabbed all these people and they're basically holding them until after the election. You just heard in the soundbite, he was speaking to a friend of mine, Michael Patrick Leahy. And basically what he's saying is Biden and Harris, they know that illegal immigration is a losing issue for them. That's number one. And number two, it is such a losing issue that they did everything they could to round all these people up and say, no, you're not going to come into our country right now. We're going to sign these executive orders. We're going to make it look like we're protecting our southern border. And then we can say, because Mexico's supposedly holding all of these people down there in Tapachula, whatever it is, that we're going to hold them there. And so then we can have the talking point that the border crossings are at their lowest levels in years. That's the plot. That's the plan. That's the ploy. Now, whether or not this is true or not, I don't know. But again, this reporter, Todd Bensman, this is a guy who is, again, world-renowned as a reporter.
There are now 150,000 jammed up in this little city down here behind militarized roadblocks so that they can't get at our border and make Kamala Harris look bad and have to answer questions about why thousands and thousands are pouring over the border. This is how they did it. They did it by hemming them up here in Tapachula, and I decided to come down and take a look at what it's like inside this hellscape.
Yeah, and this guy, best-selling author. So here's, because you're probably noticing in my language and how I'm talking about this, that I'm making sure that you understand this is what he is reporting. And I haven't seen this anywhere else, but I wouldn't put anything past Biden and Harris. Would you? No. And what he says basically, and this guy has also written for the Daily Wire, Daily Mail, New York Post, and many others. And he says that right after the election, a total of 400,000 plus will be coming to America in what I would call a mad rush to bring in as many people as possible. Now, if that happens, we need as much coverage as humanly possible so that people will remember, even if Donald Trump wins. And then it's like, well, Donald Trump will just get rid of them. I'm just going to tell you, it's going to be really hard to deport all of these people. Obviously, you start with the criminals, and then work your way down. But this is a crazy story. I mean, what this tells you is that Biden and Harris partnering with Mexico to, hold people captive basically until they feel it's the right time to release these folks and invade our country. But there's a reason that the Border Patrol Union of 16,000 strong has supported Donald Trump like they did this week.
America, I have a message for you. If we allow Border Czar Harris to win this election, every city, every community in this great country is going to go to hell.
I mean, listen, I think that those of us who have been following the news cycle, we all know that. We all know that regardless of what happens, in this election, it's going to take a lot of time to fix it, but it's going to be a lot easier to fix it if Donald Trump wins right now than, Lord help us, if Kamala Harris gets another 4 years. And the Border Patrol knows that these kinds of things are going on, and they want to actually do their job to protect our border as opposed to simply processing all of these people into our country, which is exactly what's happening right now.
The untold millions of people, unvetted, who she has allowed into this country that are committing murders, rapes, robberies, burglaries, and every other crime will continue to put our country in peril.
Yes, look, the Border Patrol is right. Women are being raped. They're getting driver's licenses and killing folks in traffic accidents like we've seen in Springfield, Ohio. Every day there's yet another horror story about migrant crime. And yes, people are getting murdered, as punctuated by Brett Baer last night or the other night during the Kamala Harris interview.
Jocelyn Nungari, Rachel Morin, Laken Riley, they are young women who were brutally assaulted and killed by some of the men who were released at the beginning of the administration. Madam Vice President, it was a policy decision in the early part of your administration. I will let one of the mothers talk about it. Take a listen.
Because of the Biden-Harris administration open border policies catch and release, they were enrolled in the Alternatives to Detention program. This meant that they were released into the United States. It was not even a full 3 weeks later that they would take my daughter, Jocelyn Nungari's life. I believe the Biden-Harris administration open border policies are responsible for the death of my daughter.
So do you owe them an apology is what I'm saying.
I will tell you that I am so sorry for her loss. I'm so sorry for her loss.
All right,
sincerely.
So as I said last night, I'm sorry for your loss is right up there with I'm sorry that you're upset. That's not an apology. And Kamala Harris and Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas and, quite frankly, the entire Democrat Party, they do owe the families of victims killed by illegal aliens an apology, and not I'm sorry for their loss, but I'm sorry that we allowed murderers into the United States. That's the apology that they need. 866-90-RED-EYE is the phone number, 866-907-3339.
Get in touch with Red Eye Radio, toll free at 866-90-RED-EYE.
@866-90-RED-EYE. You can follow me on X at Dan Mandis Show. Casey sent me a post. 40 years ago, we didn't have the internet and the ability to save receipts to show later. Look at Kamala's previous interviews from years ago. You'll see how she's trying to change on issues. A leopard never changes its spots. She'll invoke the originals if she wins. Oh, trust me, Casey, and I appreciate the note on X, and you can follow me at Dan Mandis Show. But I've got all of those audio bites. I've got every single one. They're saved. I play them all the time. And you're right. I totally believe you that it is hard for people to change their spots. I think what Kamala's trying to do, she's trying to dupe the American people. From what it looks like, it's not going to work.
This is Red Eye Radio on Westwood One.